Welcome to this psychology introductory session for those of you joining us in September 2020. Myself, Mrs Devereux, and Miss Steebles look forward to welcoming you to our psychology department. So hopefully if you're planning to come and study psychology with us, you know a bit about what psychology is. This slide here just summarises some of the key things that we do as psychologists. I want to draw particular attention to a couple of main areas. So psychology is the scientific study of the human mind, behaviour and mental processes. The key thing here is that psychology is a science. We utilise scientific methods found in other disciplines such as physics, chemistry and biology. We conduct research using scientific methods, ensuring that we are being objective and empirical in our methods. And then we use that research to draw conclusions and formulate theories that we hope to generalise to the wider population. Everything in psychology essentially is a hypothesis, it's a theory, nothing is proven. We measure the data, we scrutinise the data, and then we try to explain why we as humans think and behave in the way that we do. So I want to start by making sure you know what resources you will need for joining us in September. The most important one is the textbook noted at the top of the screen here, the complete companion student book, Psychology A-Level Year 1 and AS for AQA. Please do ensure that the edition you buy is at least the 5th edition, if not a later version. Anything earlier than that will be outdated. You may also wish to purchase the Year 2 textbook at the same time. Both of them are available on Amazon for around about £30. As an optional additional textbook, you'll see that at the bottom of the screen, I've referenced a book that is commonly referred to as the green-haired girl textbook. The Year 2 equivalent is known as the pink-haired girl textbook. These are also available on Amazon for a similar price, and we often use them in class to supplement the other textbook. It is by no means compulsory for you to buy an additional textbook. If you're not able to purchase one, that's absolutely fine. I will use handouts in the parts of the courses where there is important information covered in that second textbook. So please do make sure that you've bought these textbooks in good time for starting in September. Those of you who started to explore the bridging unit will know that I've also recommended that you use these textbooks before beginning your bridging unit. All of the information that you need, you will be able to find in those textbooks. So speaking of bridging units, hopefully this should be well underway by now. I've seen some drafts from some of you which have been excellent. I've been really impressed with the standard of work. If you haven't started yet, don't worry, you still have plenty of time, but you do need to bring these bridging units to your first lesson with us in September. If you've been looking at the bridging unit, you'll see that it does consist of 2 parts, so please do make sure that you have done both of them. The first is the research report using the streak test. Please make sure that when you write up your research reports, you use the headings provided in the task details. So for example, a subheading might say aim, and underneath that you would have the statement explaining what the aim of your research is, followed by variables, hypotheses, materials, etc., etc. All the information you need for that is detailed in your handbook. Think of this like a science report. When you're conducting research in biology or chemistry lessons, for example, when you're doing your practicals, you write up a section at a time, and this should be done in exactly the same way. Remember, psychology is a science. We are using the scientific method. So don't feel like you're doing anything wrong if your report looks like a report you might have written in your science at GCSE. The second task can be a little bit more creative here. So this is the approaches task, asking you to explore the core approaches in psychology. This can take any format that you choose. I've asked you for one side of A4 with key information about each of those approaches. It is essential that you include all of the specified information, but if you want to do this as a poster, if you want to do it as a Word document, if you want to do it as PowerPoint slides, that's absolutely fine. Use a format that works for you. This second task is designed to build a foundational knowledge of how we explain human behaviour, but it will also let me know a little bit about you in terms of how you like to learn and what methods work well for you. If at any point you get stuck on either of those tasks, please do drop me an email. My email address is at the bottom of the screen there, and please do ask any questions that you have. So let's begin to think about how it is that we study human mind and behaviour. Psychology is very complex. Yes, we are a science, and yes, we do use the scientific method, but that means we have to rely on research on human beings. Human beings are very complex and very difficult to study because we very easily manipulate our behaviour and what can be observed by researchers. So when we use research, we have to think about these things. We have to evaluate the research in terms of the quality of research that's being produced. Research is vital to all sciences. We need research in order to be able to test theories that have previously been proposed, but also to build up a foundational knowledge to propose new theories about how the human mind and behaviour works. After research has been conducted, theories are developed, altered, changed, and then further research is done to test and verify the theories. This is part of what we call verification or replication. If a piece of research has been repeated multiple times and the same thing is consistently found, we become more confident in our theory and that theory gains greater credibility. If, however, research is repeated and we find something different, then that means we need to revisit that theory and perhaps alter and change something in what's being proposed. No theory in any science is ever final. We would never use the word proved. We never say that we have proven anything to be true. Theories are commonly amended in light of new discoveries. And as a relatively new science, psychology is still emerging and theories are still developing at a rapid pace. So whereas in the other sciences you might have theories like gravity and evolution, which are just accepted maybe as fact, it's worth bearing in mind that these are still theories. There is still the possibility that these theories need to be altered and changed in the future. And as psychologists, we are very much aware of that when conducting research. So we are going to conduct a quick experiment in our session today as part of our memory topic. This is one of the first topics that you'll be exploring in year 12 when you come back in September. And for this particular experiment, you guys are going to be the participants taking part in the research. There's only two things that you need to take part, a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. You won't need anything else. So I'll just give you a few seconds to make sure that you've got those resources ready. So in a second, you'll see on the screen a list of words that will appear in a grid. All you have to do is try to memorise these words. I will read each word out loud, and you have until I have finished reading them out. I will then say go, and you can then write them down. Please don't write anything down before I tell you to go. So if you're ready, let's begin. Sour, nice. Candy, honey. Sugar, soda. Bitter, chocolate. Good, heart. Taste, cake. Tooth, tart, pie. Okay, go. So you have 1 minute to write down as many words as you can remember. Okay, stop there. So let's review how well you did, and then we'll talk about what your results tell us so far. So you can see here the table with the list of words that were read out to you. There are no tricks here, it's exactly the same list. What I'd like you to do is to put a tick next to all the words that you correctly recalled. If you recalled any words that don't appear on the list, then you'll need to put a cross next to them. Please give yourself a total out of 15. So how many correct words did you recall out of 15? I'll give you a few seconds just to have a look at your results there. Okay, so I wonder how you got on. Memory research tells us that on average, in their short-term memory, people can remember between 5 and 9 items. So somewhere between about 5 and 9 of these items correctly recalled would be average performance. Anything better than that, then you've got a good short-term memory. Anything less than that, then your short-term memory would be considered to be less than average. So it'd be very rare to find someone who could remember all 15 of those words just after looking at and hearing them read out once. We're going to give you a second chance to see if you can do any better. So with a bit of practice, do you think that you can beat your score first time round? Let's have a look and see. So a second set of words are going to appear now. They will all be different words to the first set. Again, I will read them each out loud, and you have until I have finished reading them out, and then when I say go, you can start to write them down. So make sure you've got a spare piece of paper again and some space, and we'll get started. Mad, wrath, fear, happy, hate, fight, rage, hatred, temper, mean, fury, calm, ire, emotion, enrage. Go. So write down all the words you can remember. You have 1 more minute. Okay, stop there. So let's see whether you did better or worse this time. So again, the words will appear. Put a tick next to all the words you correctly recalled and a cross next to any that you thought you had seen but had not appeared, and give yourself a second score out of 15. Okay, so did you do better or worse? Generally speaking, just having one practice attempt and then following that up closely with the second attempt won't have made a huge amount of difference to your short-term memory capacity. In most likelihood, you achieved a second score which was very similar to your first score. However, there's something a bit more interesting going on in this experiment here. So look back at your first list of words. Who wrote down the word sweet? You will have put a cross next to it if you did, because it wasn't a word that appeared on the list, but it could potentially have been there because it would fit in that category of similar words with similar meanings to the words that were actually presented. How about in your second list? How many of you wrote down the word anger or angry? Again, it wasn't there, but many people do falsely recall this word because, again, it has a similar meaning to the words that were given. In psychology, this is what we would call a false memory. You have recalled something based on information that was given to you that has primed a false memory being recalled. The word sweet, the word anger or angry didn't appear on the list, yet many people, due to suggestibility, will have reported seeing those words. So why does this matter, you ask? Why do we research things such as false memory? Well, let's have a look at the case study of Loftus and Palmer to see how this might matter a bit more in the real world. So as you're soon to discover, one of the major approaches in psychology is the cognitive approach. The cognitive approach is interested in mental processes, what happens internally within our brains and within our minds to make sense of the world around us. One of the most famous studies from cognitive psychology is that of Loftus and Palmer's research into eyewitness testimony. People who have witnessed a crime, an accident, a scene, and are then asked questions about that incident that they've seen. Leading questions are questions which are suggestive of a particular answer. Leading questions in Loftus and Palmer's research were able to successfully alter participants' perception of the speed of cars that were involved in a collision. Participants were brought into a lab where they were exposed to a video of a car crash. Following the video, they were given a questionnaire which included multiple questions, including one key question, and this is the only question the researchers were interested in. It read, about how fast were the cars going when they hit each other? But rather than using the word hit for all the participants, the researchers altered the verb to exchange it for smashed, collided, bumped, and contacted. Simply changing the verb, the researchers proposed, would alter the speed estimates, with verbs that implied a faster speed receiving higher speed estimates as opposed to verbs that sounded less violent. Unsurprisingly, the participants in the smashed condition reported the highest speed estimate of almost 41 miles an hour. As the verb intensity decreased, so too did the estimated speeds, all the way down to the lowest speed of 31.8 miles an hour in the contacted condition. Research has consistently demonstrated this. In a follow-up experiment, Loftus and Palmer asked the participants whether they had recalled seeing any broken glass at the incident. In actual fact, there was no broken glass present in any of the videos that were shown. However, the participants who were exposed to the highest stress verb condition, so smashed, were much more likely to report that yes, they had seen some broken glass, again showing the long-term impact of these leading questions. Loftus and Palmer has conducted a huge amount of research into this area, and her findings consistently show us that memories are hugely infallible. We frequently make errors in our recall of events, or even recall events that are entirely false. How many of you think you remember an event from very early childhood, maybe something from when you were 2, possibly 3 years old? Research tells us that most people don't have memories from this time, and if they do, they're very sketchy. What we tend to recall, rather, is an incident that someone has told us about. So maybe our parents have recalled something from early childhood that we then turn into our own memory of an event that we tell as though we remember it. Maybe we've been shown a photo or we've seen a video of ourselves in early childhood, and again we mistakenly believe that this is an actual memory that we have. Having studied a key piece of research in psychology such as that of Loftus and Palmer, we then move on to evaluating the study. When we evaluate the study, we ask ourselves various questions. How ethical was the research? Was any harm caused to participants? Would the research be easy to replicate to verify the findings? Could other researchers copy what Loftus and Palmer had done to test those results and see whether they hold true? Were the participants in the sample representative of the general population so we can extrapolate those findings to wider groups? Was the research realistic? Is it possible to use these findings in everyday life? Or was the research perhaps very artificial? Does it not tell us much about real life experience? And finally, and perhaps most importantly, what is the value of the research? Does the research have any impact in wider society? So take a few minutes to consider the above questions before I take you through some ideas in relation to them. So let's start with how ethical the research was. Generally speaking, research such as that of Loftus and Palmer would be considered to be ethically justifiable. There was no major harm caused to the participants. Yes, they might have felt a little anxious, but for most of the participants, taking part in the research would have been a relatively harmless experience. However, Loftus and Palmer would have to be careful to exclude participants for whom this research may be more sensitive. Participants perhaps who've recently been involved in a car accident may find exposure to a video of another car accident relatively stressful, and therefore you may have to be careful to filter out those kinds of participants before conducting the research. Would the research be easy to replicate to verify the findings? Loftus and Palmer included very clear instructions for how their participants participated in the research. They gave step-by-step instructions, they had links to the videos that were demonstrated, and many people have replicated the research and found similar findings. So this tells us that the research is reliable. The same thing has been shown consistently, and therefore the findings hold better weight. Were the participants in the sample representative of the general population? Well, in actual fact, no. The participants were all male students, undergraduates at university. As psychologists, we know that one of the major things that affects memory is age. Younger children and older adults tend to have poorer memories than young adults. So the group of participants that were used in Loftus and Palmer's research probably actually were less affected by the leading question than more elderly or younger participants. This means that the study has what we would call low population validity. We can't take the findings from Loftus and Palmer's research and say that all people in society would have been affected in the same way. There are likely to be significant differences which would need to be further explored. Was the research realistic? Is it possible to take these findings and apply them to everyday life? This is probably where Loftus and Palmer's research comes under the greatest criticism. Bringing participants into a safe lab experiment where you sit them in front of a computer screen and show them a video of a mock car crash is very, very different to seeing a car crash in real life. Participants in the research knew that they were about to see a car crash, so they were paying attention. They probably had very low anxiety levels because they weren't actually involved in the incident themselves. In the real world, car crashes often happen very quickly and very unexpectedly, so we're not necessarily paying attention to the cars involved until after the incident has occurred. We also know that in the real world, when you witness a car accident, anxiety levels tend to be very, very high. Anxiety reduces the capabilities of memory. The anxiety overrides our ability to transfer the information that we've just seen into a reliable memory source. So again, in real life, these findings perhaps don't actually mean a huge amount. So what is the value of the research? Loftus has conducted a huge amount of research into memory to demonstrate just how unreliable memory is. In particular, she uses her research to defend people who have been falsely accused of crimes that they didn't commit. She's defended many people in America who have been wrongly accused of crimes and they've later been acquitted of them. So it's important that we study things like this. The main thing that we want to do as psychologists is to take our research and apply it in the real world to have real life applications. Loftus claims that there are huge real life applications from her research, and if you're interested in exploring these further, there are many YouTube videos with TED Talks. If you just put in Loftus, you'll see that she talks in vast detail about her research and what she finds in relation to eyewitness testimony. So what do you need to do now, between now and September? Firstly and most importantly, please do make sure you complete the bridging unit work, both the report on the Stroop test using a scientific format and a summary of the main approaches in psychology in whichever format you choose. Please do ask me any questions that you've got, whether they be about the bridging unit or anything else to do with psychology. My email address is on screen and I'd be happy to offer you any guidance or answer any other queries you may have. Please do make sure you've purchased your textbook and do begin reading. We will start Year 12 with looking at research methods, so looking at how research is conducted, the mathematical component of the course, and the memory topic. So these are good starting points for you to begin. And finally, have a good summer, and I look forward to seeing you all in September. Take care.